Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us in the presentation and the discussion around a very important topic, data and how we evaluate data, how we deal with data, and what we do with it. Seems like an obvious topic, but it's maze of data that we titled the discussion today because we feel, based on multiple discussions with our clients, with the people we interact with on a daily basis, it doesn't seem to be as easy to navigate through as it should seem. So quick introduction from us on who we are and who is participating in the discussion today. So my name is Margot Trebika. I work at Wolters Kluwer, and I am responsible for sales as well as consultations around implementation of solution, contract lifecycle management solution, as well as AI, to help individuals with managing data and managing contracts. So my background is in legal. I started my career a long time ago at Clifford Chance in corporate law, and then moved into Gartner, where I was doing and dealing a lot with data and data analytics vendors. And since then, I have been working at legal tech space and managing and listening to a lot of different stories, problems around data. So hopefully my experience will be very, very practical to you today. Alan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Margot, and great to be together on this webinar about a very interesting topic, data. So my background, so I'm a lawyer by background, legally educated in different jurisdictions. You can hear my accent, so I'm French originally, but I spent half of my life outside France, traveled, UK, US. I'm speaking to you from Zurich in Switzerland. And I started my career in Big Four. And already at that time, data was very important because I was specializing in the law of new technologies. So already, data, back web, front web was something that was very important. Then I moved to big law, big international law firms before spending, 1 or 2 years in the academic world. I was completing a PhD, and data was very important as well, because we'll come back to that point with Margot explaining the distinction between operational data and business legal intelligence data. Then I spent close to 20 years in big companies, mostly American companies, so Nestle, Whirlpool, Kraft Foods, Mondelez International. And here I was looking more at the operational data type of things, budget management, so how lawyers are doing their job. And then for the past 5 years, so I've been doing consulting activities, and I'm currently helping clients managing their data, operational data, and business legal intelligence data, and very excited to be able to share what I see every week, every day with many different type of companies.
Brilliant, and thank you for the introduction. So the big difference between Alan's and my experience, and that we hope to share with you and hope to cover the whole audience today, is that Alan comes from a very big, the largest organization, corporation, as he mentioned. My experience will be more around, and the examples will be shared from the space of mid-size and small businesses. So hopefully that will help you understand the differences sometimes that those different companies face. But before we dive into an actual discussion, we want to have some interaction from you, and we would like to start with a poll. Let's see, just to understand where you stand currently with your data. If you don't mind trying to answer the questions specifically around data management. So when you see the pie chart that will show up in a moment, in which category do you believe you see your organization at the moment? So this is the pie chart. in terms of, and this pertains purely to collecting, organizing, and retrieving data. Let's give it another 30 seconds. And when we are ready, we can present the results. Hopefully everyone had enough time to click the button. And hopefully you will see the results. And I actually cannot believe it because it looks almost identical, especially around planning to improve, what our statistics really reflect. So we can clearly see that the highest result was around planning to improve, and that definitely reflects what we see in terms of the statistics that we gathered. Already improved is around this year, so great to see. Improvement, 18% of all the respondents compared to 48 planning to improve. So well done to those who already did the first step. Then improvement needed, but no plan yet, 30%. So that deviates a bit from the results that we have actually we have received from our previous audience, previous statistics, but it's great to see. And we are really keen what stops you from not having an actual plan yet. And no plans to improve, 5%. Again, interesting. Hopefully we will inspire you to change your mind after the session today. Okay. So I'm gonna close the poll. And really, let's dive deeply into talking about statistics. And I do love statistics because I have been doing that for a long time, but that also helps us navigate what's important and what's really the current state of affairs. What is the real life representation of what's going on with data? But it's interesting to talk about data and what happens, who plans what. But I think very interesting and important is actually to start a step earlier to define what does data mean and how do you differentiate different data. What is the impact of the data on how the organization is actually being managed and what is happening inside the organization. So when we are talking about data from my own perspective and from the perspective of clients that I'm dealing with, data is any information that hold within the organization, any data that is related to the contract, the company information, anything that you can see, that you can report on, and you can work with. I presume that was the initial thinking behind also your decision-making in terms of that poll when you were talking about collecting, organizing, and retrieving legal information. But how, and we will dive deeply into that, and I think Alan has his own views on what data is, etc. But in terms of current state of what companies are at and how companies are working with data, we clearly see the biggest element, the biggest part, planning to improve. So comparison between last year and this year in terms of our statistics, and that was very clearly reflected in your responses as well, we are around 50% in terms of overall companies where they stand with the data, planning to improve. Why? What is the current situation? So when I speak with existing clients, prospects, people who are planning to improve information, where are they? They certainly have a lot of data. They have, for example, a lot of contracts. And they have a lot of company-related corporate information, for example, on different entities, right? Shareholders. It really depends how you run your organization. But there are masses of papers. It could be a paper stored in a box. I had clients previously who were talking about sending documents in by courier to us at Wolters Kluwer at Legisway to help them with uploading the data into a virtual environment. So that's unfortunately in 2024 is still a situation where people do still hold a lot of very important confidential data in a very insecure way, i.e. paper. And that's why when they realize something is missing, it's very difficult to find information. It's very difficult to answer questions from the business about the contracts. Then there is a question, okay, I need to do something about it. And then the planning comes into play. When it comes to those organizations, it's typically triggered by a few aspects, such as the need from the business for provision of information, the need to deal running with the business stakeholders, such as sales, who require a lot of information, who require to run with the information when they are doing a sales process, but cannot retrieve it very quickly from the system. So have to ask in-house legal teams for some information. In-house legal teams then have to try and go into different places. Maybe they have documents stored on their desktop. Maybe they have documents stored in SharePoint, and which is or sometimes in the paper format. Then it's very difficult to answer certain questions. Let's not forget about current state of affairs. At the moment in 2024, what is really important? We talk about data, but is data really important? Is information really important to have? Because when you think about a few decades ago, 1950s, 1960s, information and quick retrieval from your head, from the base was the king. The more information you had in your head, what made you a king, made you a winner, made you the best lawyer. Because there wasn't anything to help you with that. So you had to absorb it all in order to give it back to someone. At the moment, information is so big and so vast that it's impossible for individual human beings, even the brainiest, even the smartest lawyers, to share that information or store that information in their minds and share it comfortably, because the legal sphere has significantly changed from simple, fairly simple. I'm not saying simple in a sense that it's not requiring analytics, but simple in terms of how the contracts were built. In 1950s, you had contracts that contained 4-10 pages. Nowadays, it's hundreds, it's thousands of pages per contract. And that's really tricky for individuals to work with. And that's why it's so important now to think about legal information and storage of data and being able to collect it quickly, efficiently, because we can't no longer open our shelves in our mind that was possible 50 years ago. Alan, over to you. What's in your view a state of affairs currently and that you see in big organizations?
So I love the point you're making, Margot, about starting from the challenges. So to retrieve information quickly. Challenge number one, that indeed you still see in many organizations. Challenges number two, and I love the way you put it, information from your mind. And this is, I believe, where we will see a lot of changes, transformation, which is how to bring the information in the mind of many employees to a system so that this information can be shared and leveraged by people within an organization. And just to start from this area of challenges, I'm currently working for a big organization, And then we are trying to set up what we call a legal front door. And one of the objectives is to make the information which is today in the mind of lawyers in a system, so that then I am the business person and I need to run my business and I need a response within 1 hour. Instead of going after the lawyer who has information in her mind, the information is now embedded into a system. And when I give this concrete example, so you have, one very important aspect, which is, so we speak about data, we speak about information. And so who is the consumer of that information? Is a consumer of that information a lawyer, or is it someone who has no specifically legal background? So here, my first tip for this conversation today is try to think big. So I understand the audience is mostly lawyers, but the future is about data and is about having, data which are directly consumable by people who are not lawyers. That's a very, so that's the first tip. Then, going back to your question, Margot, about the state of affairs. So when we speak about state of affairs, we need to look at what we call the level of maturity of organization. So, and here you see the pie chart, and you may think, well, if I'm in the red box, maybe it's not great because it means, low level of maturity. But, so the very important point for you guys is what is the right frame of reference to assess your level of maturity. And it's great, Margot put some already elements, the type of documents I just mentioned, so with consuming the information. But so what I'm doing today with clients, and this is relating to, what I call operational data, which is data relating to what lawyers are doing within companies. So I've developed a very specific frame of reference to assess your maturity. And before explaining you this model, I would like to pause and start again from the challenges. And when I speak to clients, to big organization or smaller organization, one of the biggest pain points of lawyers is the fact that they spend a lot of time on low add value activities. And it would be great if we'll be in the same room, I will be asking some of you, so how much time do you spend every week on reviewing a confidentiality agreement where you have been training the business stakeholders how to manage this? This is not something complex, even without being a lawyer, it's something easy to navigate. And the reality for many lawyers is that they spend a lot of time on this. In some organization, like 75% of the time of lawyers is spent on low value add activities. So, and this is a pain point that, I see again across the board, and you have this study from the Harvard, business law school from 2021, which says exactly the same. And then the second point is, you are overwhelmed. You spend, the more with less challenge. And this is your pain point. So how to help you move away from a situation where you spend all this time on stuff you don't like to do, which is not interesting, is to get data. And then, so that's a very simple frame of reference, which is one simple question. How much time do you spend on low value add activities versus high value add activities? And the second question is, if you are dealing with a big organization and you want, imagine you are the general counsel and you want to know what your team is spending their time on, then you need to have those data points not only for yourself, but for a team of 150 lawyers. And how do you make sure that you have consistency about those data points? That if someone in Turkey tells you I spend 30% of my time on confidentiality agreement, then your lawyer in the United Kingdom will say a confidentiality agreement is something which is low value add activities. So it's about building the consistency of data, what I call the taxonomy. So the way you describe the activities, you should have a consistent way to describe that. So to summarize, you have one big challenge: how much time you spend on interesting stuff, sexy stuff, what you want to be doing as a lawyer, versus the boring stuff. And so how much time do you spend on this, and how do you build a taxonomy so that then you can track what you do across the board? So that's was maybe one point of reference. And maybe Margot, you want to take it from there, or should we introduce the distinction then between operational data, what I just described, and then the business legal intelligence data?
I think what you said about taxonomy is brilliant, because when you think about taxonomy, you are already 2 steps ahead, because this means you've got structured information. You have some rules of putting information together. You have balance with your data. But before we get there, you are absolutely right. I think it's very important to see if the audience today knows actually the difference between business intelligence and other type of data. If we can throw a poll again, just to get your perspective on that and see where we stand. Excellent. So the question is, do you understand the distinction between operational data and business legal intelligence data? And let's give it 30 seconds, as this is a very quick choice. And if we can have results back on the screen, that would be great. Great. I really love the answers, because I was hoping for a lot of no's. And what it means is that it's great that you are all here, because Alan has a lot of experience with helping organizations in differentiating between that and putting a proper taxonomy in place. So Alan, please explain in short, what is the difference? What is operational data? What is business intelligence data?
Yeah, so great. And I'm like you, Margot, I'm very happily surprised that we have close to 40% of the audience who understand the distinction. So it's super great, because that's going back to the level of maturity, the first step to understand this distinction. So operational data is data relating to the activities of lawyers. So what how do they do their job? How much time does it take for them to review a contract? So those are the operational data. The business legal intelligence data are really the hardcore legal stuff. So if you take a contract, so here is not saying, okay, how many contracts do I manage? It's what this liability provision. So why is it drafted this way? I don't know if you have lawyers from the UK, but I'm sure most of you, they the Baxendale case, which is a concept of foreseeability. So here it's really like to go into understanding the law. Or if I give another example, you were mentioning, Margot, earlier the volume of data. It's a great point. The volume of data is getting bigger and bigger. And when you listen to many organizations, one of their big pain points is, what is referred to as a tsunami of regulations. Think about ESG, deforestation, CSRD, all those new regulation coming your way. So here, when you look at the law, if I take CSRD, one very simple question. So I told you I'm based in Switzerland, and you may think, oh, it's a European legislation, so it does not apply to me. And actually, no, when you look at the law and at the scope of application, you have an extraterritorial element. So even if you're a big company based in Switzerland and you have subsidiaries in Europe, CSRD may apply to your parent company being based in Switzerland. So this is the first component of business legal intelligence. So you look at contract, you look at the law. A third example is like the policies, if we go to compliance. So if I take, if you have a risk management system relating to competition law, so how is your training being done? And now I'm moving to the second aspect of business legal intelligence data, which is, so you have the law, and then for lawyers who are in-house, your job is to translate the law to business employees, so people who don't know the law. And this is an art because it's very difficult to do that. So if I go back to my example about CSRD, you should not go into the intricacies of section 25 of CSRD says that, which makes reference to another directive and another regulation to then provide an answer to your business stakeholder. It's very simple. Does it apply to me? Yes, no. So this means that you should go into the process of modeling the law. And to answer this simple question, that's what I did with some clients. You need to read 1,000 pages, 22 regulations and directive, and then you can model it. So that then you just, take a few business data, how many employees you have, what is your global revenue, are you a public interest enterprise, and then it will tell you whether this law applies to you and when. And this is what we call business legal intelligence data. And this is, for me, that's really the future. But that's where I feel there is a big gap today because, lawyers, they think, oh no, I'm just doing my job as I used to do it. I have this question, I will try to answer this question. And you need to go one step further, which is, okay, the question you have just answered, how can you standardize it, systematize it, and then, as Margot was saying, put it in a machine. And then, if this machine, you have some artificial intelligence, that's where the magic can happen. So those simple activities, will be done by machines in a very accurate way. But you first need to have, what Margot was saying before, the structured data. That's what is very important. So hope it makes sense. Operational data, business legal intelligence data. And I think, Margot, you have amazing experience, being part of Wolters Kluwer and everything you are doing to leverage AI. Maybe.
Yes, but Alan, before we even get to AI, there is this whole set of things that standard systems such as contract lifecycle management, corporate entity management can solve. For example, and that's to do with data, and that's to do with lawyers, as you said, comparison between operational and business intelligence. Lawyers not only have to analyze contracts and provide that very legally specific advice and drafting skills and negotiation skills, but they also have to communicate with the business on how they are doing. So I do have clients coming in with really basic problems that could be easily solved by such a solution. For example, they operate on large volume of entities. Could be 20, could be 160, could be 250 entities. There are different companies who have different levels, different problems, but they come from the same page. Everything is done in Excel. How can you realistically keep updating Excel and not miss information? How can you have a solid calculations of voting rights, of shareholder rights, of financial rights being presented to you very quickly before if someone asks you a questions? Companies need to be updated. Companies' data, mandates expire. So these are just examples where a system that has that data plugged in gives you a very quick visibility. So you can update people from the business of what is going on in your organization. For example, when it comes to contracts specifically, how many NDAs do you review? A month, a year? Who is doing that? How much time is being spent on it? What is the financial performance? Let's say you are a company that sells something, maybe wind-related produce, maybe manufacturing of cars, whatever it is that you are selling. How much are you selling? How is your sales team performing in terms of delivering contracts? Maybe as a legal team, you need to get quick updates on how many contracts with limitation of liability above the agreed company threshold have been signed this month or this year. This is the information that you typically, if you don't have any system in place, you would have to go into an individual contract and find it out. Or if you are a bit more organized and you are using Excels or any summarization documents, maybe Word documents, some people do tables in Word. Unfortunately, I know that it doesn't sound impressive, I must say, but that's what happens because lawyers are not always very familiar with other solutions. So they like to work in Word and they create their own summary in Word document or Excel. And then it takes a while for them to go into the different sources where they store information and provide that data to the business. And I'm not even talking about what they do on a daily basis, i.e. the very legal contract management, because that's definitely very possible. So these are just a few examples when things can be done really quickly. But Alan, you obviously moved on to topic of AI, and I know you are very keen, and I'm not surprised because it is, and I'm not sure how many, we don't have a poll about it, but I would be very keen, and I regret we didn't do one, and I would be very keen to see if anyone here is using AI already or has tested, because we cannot avoid that topic, how much we want to talk about it, and it's super relevant to data. And if there are lawyers who say on the call and think, oh, she's talking rubbish, I'm not gonna use AI very soon, it's not relevant, there is a lot of hallucination in data, it's not accurate enough. I think it's really important to state the facts. How the legal departments looked and behaved and operated for the last century hasn't changed much. However, what happened 2 years ago with ChatGPT and the access to AI for absolutely everyone with extreme ease has changed everything. If you want to believe it now, I'm really happy, but it happened. And AI will be coming in if you want it or not, if your company wants to agree to it or not. It is coming, and it is already here. It will be here. And within legal departments, it may take a while to adopt to it, to agree to it. But at some point, every single lawyer will be using AI in their job, whether to summarize a set of documents, whether to pull information out and provide a report on certain set of data. It doesn't matter. So at the moment, it's a trial and error and testing environment. But the fact is that it's here and it's not going to go anywhere because it's so impactful, because people realize how improved their lives can be. And whether it's drafting a quick email as a response, but then it will move into different spaces. And when it comes to data, it couldn't be a simpler option, because let's not forget, AI is language-based. And what do lawyers do? They operate with words. This is their skill. This is the mastery. And there is not a better combination that I can think about by combining lawyers and AI to help with the things that lawyers currently are spending a lot of time on, such as drafting contracts, such as looking for information in contract, extracting data from contracts. I like to give an example of my client who is in franchise, and franchise agreements can be really painful. They can be 300, 400 pages long, but they're fairly repetitive in structure. So what AI can help you do is to analyze those contracts, extract information into brackets, into tables for you, and summarize certain sections to make it easier, to make it faster. And the amount of time saved on doing that is tremendous. So I've been hearing from that law firm who is doing franchise agreements that instead of reviewing one contract for a couple of days, they can do it in a couple of hours, which is absolutely incredible, because what it means for them, they will make a bigger business. They can take on more work. In their case, it's a business growth perspective. But for others, it's getting rid of administrative tasks. It's putting a lot of attention into being able to review and analyze contracts in more depth, to negotiate much more deeply, to draft more sensible contracts rather than review NDAs, rather than providing reports that typically took hours. You can have it with a click of a button now, thanks to the AI. So these are just examples where AI came in and really helped out. But Alan, what do you see? What's your take on AI in the legal information management space?
It's very interesting, and I like like the positive perspective. And I always start from the human being, and what does that mean, and and it would be interesting, maybe another poll, that if we'll be in the same room, we could ask, so are you scared about AI? What do you think about AI? And here, the picture can be really mixed. You hear at times, but less and less, lawyers being scared about AI. They think it's going to replace me. What about if you start embedding my experience into this machine and vectorization? Does that mean that I will have less work and I will lose my job? Or if you are in a law firm, does that mean that I will have less work because my clients will be leveraging AI? And then yesterday they were asking me for support and help, and then the machine will be able to do it. So I like to contrast and start from some of the fears that you can hear at times. My perspective, and I was last week doing a program with one of the leading general counsel association in France, and you had one of the leader of this association explaining that actually we should not be scared, and it's really corroborating what you were explaining, Margot, which is lawyers who are not using AI, then yes, they should feel threatened, because you will not be able to compete with lawyers who are using AI. And AI should be seen as a help, as a support, and not as something that will be replacing you or your job. So that's looking at AI from an emotional standpoint. Now, you have another dimension about AI, which is another thing we hear as well. It goes with some risks. You have the EU AI Act. You have, I think more than 60 draft legislation or policies around the world on AI. And that's part of this tsunami of regulation. And I think you should be really mindful about this. It's great. It's a great tool. It's a great technology. But how do you implement and deploy this technology within your organization and managing those risks? And when we speak about risk, so you have this half funny story, with Gemini, which is this LLM, large language model program from Google. And then a few months ago, they had like a big reputational and media issue, because when you were asking who are the founding fathers of the United States of America to Gemini, then it was pulling out someone from Asia, someone from Africa. And why? Because they tweaked the model so that then it will not be biased, but they pushed this far too much. And biases is one of the issues that any large language model can have. So that's one example of risk. The other example is copyright infringement, because those models have been trained with a lot of copyrighted data, and you have some ongoing litigation in the US. And then the question for you is, if you start leveraging those tools, which are based on large language model, and then those large language models, they need to make a design around, so to take out all the copyright data which are infringing. And if they can't do it, and then you can't use this tool anymore, I mean, here I'm like, maybe making the risk a bit big, but that's what you need to think about. So, this risk management aspect. But going back to the data points, and this is, one of the big challenge, and I'm using AI tools every day in what I'm doing. So, it's an amazing tool that will, as Margot was saying, helping you being more productive. Like, you need to summarize a new piece of legislation, and if we take the EU AI Act, it's 300 pages. So maybe, you can leverage AI tool and ask specific questions, and then the tool will help you. Or like if I take CSRD, when I was reading some provisions, it's very difficult to understand the way it's being drafted. From my perspective, is not great, poor legal drafting. And then AI will help you explaining, okay, the EU legislators, that's what they mean. All right, okay. So here I'm starting from the positive example. But by contrast, I think where you have a big gap in terms of the efficiency of AI is when you ask them question about specific legal rules. Like one example, if you ask some AI tool, tell me what is the applicable law to copyright ownership in the US, in Germany, and in Switzerland. I mean, the tools that I tested provide you some very bad responses. Some basic case law in the US, they don't even give it that to you. And why is that? Because the data that have been used to train the model are not good. And I go back to my business legal intelligence data. So that's why it's so important to make sure that once you have those data, you look at them, you take the contract, you say, okay, this limitation of liability provision, is it good? Why not? Is it good for my company? Is it good if I negotiate the purchase of a 50 million manufacturing equipment for my manufacturing facility in Germany, for example? And this is where, for me, that's a kind of almost a new job of lawyers, which is to really spend time on looking at the business legal intelligence data and is it is it qualitative? And then once you have done this job, then you can feed the machine or do the, what is called RAG, retrieval generation, augmented retrieval. And then you will get very, very good result. But you have this preliminary step to do. So AI is indeed a big topic. And then I guess the question when we're preparing the call with you guys with Margot is how do you do that? How do you move from a position where you don't have data or you have limited data to a position where yes, you start having the data, you start leveraging AI, and I think Margot, you have some very interesting experience there.
Yes, especially if we're looking at the statistics themselves, the planning to improve, half of the audience, improvements needed but not planned yet. That's another really big portion of the crowd. And why is that so? What triggers those results? Obviously, there are some elements that are obvious, right? We've got a lot of data, it is scattered, or it's poor quality of data, or it's difficult to retrieve. That's why the reason for planning to improve, improvements needed. But what stops you from getting into the green, i.e. the already improved? What stops such a large piece of audience, such huge amount of lawyers from not getting there yet? Or if planning, that's great, but hopefully not planning for a long term, but a short term, because the quicker you do it, the more effective you will be in the future. Because we know that data quality is often very low. We know that it is everywhere. We know it is in different sources. It's difficult to get it. So what do companies do? What stops them really? I think, so obviously there are different examples in terms of approaches. There are examples in terms of who are we talking to? And I hope this will resonate with audience because it will be differentiated by geography, by industry. Financial industry specifically in the UK, for example, is really difficult to have all the data management operations to be organized because they are also highly regulated, and that makes it very difficult and very complex to put systems in place that would be compliant with how they function. And then when you look at, for example, German market, there is an issue, very clear, not an issue, but the biggest point that is stopping companies is the security of data, the lack of perhaps experience or trust in cloud, in being able to store their data, not in a physical space. So things that are stopping individuals are very technical sometimes. It could be jurisdictional, but it could be internal. And the big thing that people are not thinking about as a first thing, but it's hugely impacting the decision-making process. And I'm not mentioning money, budgets, we can get there. We are not gonna talk today about the things such as legal teams not really having the strategic position in the organization, strategic enough to influence the decisions about budgets often, because they are working a bit in siloed in majority of organizations that I'm speaking with. So it's very difficult for them they can plan, they can test out, they can come to us as vendors and discuss what's possible, what's not, learn about AI. But at the end of the day, they do not have enough authority to prioritize their needs, because the business will always want to save money. And that means not really spending on technology. But the other big thing is change management, is that mindset that often lawyers have, that makes it extremely hard to move from planning to improve and already improved, as you see from these statistics. Because change management, i.e., how you think about your role as a lawyer, how you've worked for the last, lawyers worked for the last centuries, and how you could be working with help of technology. And that means you have to completely change the way you work, completely change the way you think about those things, because it means you no longer need to do admin that you are so used to, that you no longer need to respond to thousands of questions a year from stakeholders who have some compliance legal questions, because these things can be answered or on their behalf based on your internal policies and documents without interacting with you. But in organizations, I often find that step is almost like jumping off the cliff for some lawyers, that it's so hard to do, but you've got a parachute on your back and you've got a second parachute, but you still fear to make that step because you haven't done it before. And it's not surprisingly, I'm not surprised to see that people are so scared of that step. But when it comes to change management, Alan, what do you see? How you approach that topic? How you advise internally what to do, what steps to take to improve and help improve organizations by taking that step, by changing that mindset, by approaching this? How do you take it?
So it's a huge topic, and it's a huge topic, complex topic. I see that many companies are struggling. And what I observe, and I'm dealing with different organizations every week, and that's what I've been doing for the past 5 years. And before firsthand, when I was in-house, it starts from the leadership team. And when I mean leadership team for big organization, it's a group general counsel. And so very experimented people, a lot of experience, amazing professional, as they've seen many things, big litigation, big M&A project, you name it. But technology is something that is new to them and to this level of magnitude, and especially if you take AI. So when we speak about transformation, the challenge number one is how do you enable those amazing leaders to understand what technology is about and what transformation is about. And then, so the starting point is this, is self-awareness. You don't know what you don't know. The problem is at this level, like any human beings, because you have an amazing experience, you have a lot of responsibilities. For many of them, it's difficult to say, yes, here I don't know. And then, where can I get the right advice? And I see sometimes, what they do, they will say, oh, now we have the legal ops, legal operations. And it's great, legal ops, because there are maybe people with, less experience, but more like, attuned to technology. And then say, okay, then I'm going to leverage someone in my team who has interest in technology, and it's great. Then we're going to start legal ops. But the challenge I see is the lack of strategic view, because you have the experience you have. So maybe technology, and still we could ask, okay, what does that mean to know technology? Does that mean that a few tools like Legisway, Wolters, Kluwer, or all the other players like LexisNexis, or does that mean that you know how to do coding? Or does that mean that you actually know AI and you can do algorithm, and you attended the class of Yann LeCun in New York? So you see here, I'm just trying to put things in perspective. So when I go back to this general counsel, my advice will be, no, try to get someone who knows technology very well, but who have also the breadth and depth of experience, so that you understand complex organization and you have managed big M&A project and you have managed big litigation. So to have the ability to connect the dots. So for me, that's really like starting from a strategic standpoint. So that's when we speak about transformation, it's turn at the top and making sure you start from the right footstep. The second element is I am the general counsel. If you believe that you're going to do digital transformation just by looking at the legal function alone, it's a big mistake. Because again, you are a lawyer in a big organization. And the legal technology and the technology you want to implement, most of the time, it will not only be for your legal function, it will be for the entire organization. And this means that if I'm the GC, so I've got the help from the right professional with the right level of expertise and experience. I built a strategic plan. I speak to my CEO and I say, look, I want to engage into digital transformation. And I need your support, CEO, and I need the support of the board of management. Because when I will implement technology, it's not only for my lawyers, but it's for my lawyers interacting with the sales function, with the procurement function, with the HR function. And if you don't have those support, then what I see too many times is project failing because you don't have a holistic plan touching on all the people within your organization. So turn at the top. And then I will just give another example. I'm just checking the time in 1 minute, which is transformation requires time. But what I see, what I was saying earlier, the biggest challenge of lawyers today in big organizations is they spend too much time on low add value stuff and they are super busy. So this means that they don't have time to test tools. And this requires time. So if you really want to do it properly, you should make sure that your team have at least 10% of their total available time to spend on transformation. And it's not the poor legal ops guys who are very often isolated that can do that. No, the transformation is about people doing the job on a daily basis. So you see, it's above and beyond technology. So the two pain points I've just mentioned. It starts from leadership, and it goes as well from looking at people and how busy they are and do they have time to engage into digital transformation.
And I think there is a good analogy with, for example, marketing teams. No one currently thinks about marketing as some side part of the business. Marketing is a core to every organization that treats itself seriously. Because if you don't have the right website, if you don't have the marketing brochures, if you don't have all the activities around your organization in such a busy and crowded world, you are not going to make business. So maybe a couple of decades ago, marketing was a very niche thing, not much money going into it. Huge amount of money goes to look at Coca-Cola. Obviously, they are very famous for their Christmas marketing and being everywhere all the time. But even the smaller organizations, they're always out there. Marketing is a huge part of the business. Is legal such a big part of the business if you think about it? If you think how impactful legal can be on the business, all the liabilities, all the financial risks, all the huge and important contractual obligations that you as organizations enter into with another party, that's a huge responsibility. It could be a lifeline for some organizations, but you answer yourself, do you feel that you are so valued as any other departments or more? Because I think legal teams should be valued much more than they currently are. And is it something that you feel comfortable with going to and ask for budget for your organization to be supported. Because if you look at marketing, they have huge budgets. If you look at IT, they have huge budgets. And any other sales, any other department will have huge budgets for growth, for expansion, for transformation, for becoming better. But does legal have the same? I don't think so. And that comes out from the polls as well as a response. And just briefly, so we are running out of time because this topic is vast and huge, but hopefully that help you understand where we stand, what are the challenges, and how important it is to think about data, and that to make a step, you need to really get there very quickly, because if you are not going to get there with your own merit, you will be dragged into it at some point, because legal is transforming whether you like it or not, unfortunately. So a bit of a pessimistic view here, because you are no longer in control of change. It's happening on your behalf. But we had one question around, and thank you, Alan, for answering questions around AI. Specific tools. But we had one question from Michael around statistics and already improved. So just to give you an information about statistics that we used. So this all comes from benchmark that was prepared by Wolters Kluwer. You will all receive a link to it after the call. And full statistics, full demographics will be available for you to see. And yes, Michael, you were right. Probably the difference between very small stats over there and already improved is either the fact that people who already improved do not want to interact with us because they already improved, they don't need to find vendors, so they're not so interested in statistics and responding to such stats. But also the other reason is it could be a just different group of people that happen to answer, but the other statistics fairly clearly respond to each other. But you will get all the links, link to the benchmark where you can compare and contrast and know full details of it all. But at this moment in time, I wanted to thank you very much for joining Alan and myself. If you have any follow-up questions and you would like to connect with us, we are available on LinkedIn and highly responsive. So please do feel free to drop us an email.
Thank you very much, everyone. And thank you, Margot.
Thank you all for attending. All the best and have a great rest of your day.
Bye now.